What is up guys, my name is Chase, and over the years I feel like The Legend of Zelda has become much more prominent in the video game space. With massive hit games like Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, I feel like The Legend of Zelda has been introduced to a whole new audience, myself included, because the release of The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild was actually what inclined me to start my first ever Zelda game, The Legend of Zelda The Wind Waker HD on the Nintendo Wii U. So with The Legend of Zelda being bigger than ever, and with so many The Legend of Zelda games being playable on the Nintendo Switch, you may be wondering, which Zelda game should you start with? So I'm here to give you a few options for a beginner's guide to The Legend of Zelda. Now obviously saying which Zelda game you should start with will depend on your own preferences. So first off, if you're most interested in the lore and the story of The Legend of Zelda, you should start with The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword HD. The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword tells the story of two childhood friends, Link and Zelda. This makes the story of Skyward Sword take place at the very beginning of the Legend of Zelda timeline. As you play through the story of Skyward Sword, you'll learn more about Link, Zelda, the Triforce, as well as many characters who become staples in the Legend of Zelda games. And this emphasis on story makes it great for anybody looking to dive into the lore of the Legend of Zelda. Now, along with the fact that Skyward Sword is a nice introduction to the story of the Legend of Zelda, I also think it would be a good game to start with because it simplifies a lot of the controls and gameplay mechanics that will later become more fleshed out in other The Legend of Zelda games. Skyward Sword has a heavy emphasis on motion controls. In order to swing your sword and block with your shield, you're going to have to do the motions with your actual controllers. I think this can work well if you're still kind of getting used to how the combat in The Legend of Zelda works. So overall, I think The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword HD on Nintendo Switch is a good Zelda game to start with if you're mostly interested in the lore and story behind the Legend of Zelda timeline. Next up, this is for the more seasoned video gamer. If you're someone who is comfortable with playing 3D video games by now, I think you should start with The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. Breath of the Wild is a very interesting The Legend of Zelda game, and I think there are several reasons why this would be a nice Zelda game to start with. For one thing, this game is absolutely breathtaking, no pun intended, but there is so much to explore in the world of The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. This was one of Nintendo's first attempt at a true open world type of game, which means that you can explore anywhere on this map at your leisure. And because of that, I feel like this game does a good job at sort of introducing you to the giant world of Hyrule. For the most part, Breath of the Wild has a pretty basic story. It doesn't necessarily rely on you having to know about everything in The Legend of Zelda. I could totally see anybody who has no idea what The Legend of Zelda is being able to hop into this game and just have a fun time doing as much exploration as they would like. So I would say that The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild pretty much feels like any type of open world adventure game that you know and love, but with Nintendo's own little twist to it. And finally, if you are new to video games, which I should say there's nothing wrong with being a new gamer, and I'm very happy that you've decided to join this cult. I mean family. No, in all seriousness, if you're not really comfortable with the 3D type of Zelda games, I can recommend that you start with The Legend of Zelda A Link to the Past. Listen, I think it's totally fair that some people just aren't used to controlling a 3D game. I've seen many people who love video games but just can't wrap their head around having to use two analog sticks at once. So in that case, there are some 2D Zelda games where you don't even have to worry about a Z-axis. The Legend of Zelda A Link to the Past was the big Zelda game for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. And luckily nowadays you can still play A Link to the Past using the Super Nintendo Switch Online app. Although this does mean that you are going to need a Nintendo Switch Online membership for your Nintendo Switch system. But in my opinion, A Link to the Past is the perfect introduction to 2D Zelda games. Obviously, since this game has a top-down perspective, it's very simple to explore and fight enemies because you only have to worry about a certain number of directions. I feel like A Link to the Past is just basic enough where if you're interested in dipping your toes in The Legend of Zelda, it's a nice place to start, but it also has so much of its own character and charm. Solving puzzles in a 2D Zelda game like A Link to the Past can be completely different than solving puzzles in a 3D game like Skyward Sword HD. It's also probably not as daunting as some of the newer Zelda games like Tears of the Kingdom. So overall, if you're looking for a way to get into the Legend of Zelda series, and maybe you're not too comfortable with larger 3D games, The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past is a good 2D game to get started with. So there you have it, 3 different pathways if you're just getting started with The Legend of Zelda on Nintendo Switch. Once again, there are a bunch of different The Legend of Zelda games that you can dive into on the Nintendo Switch, with the classic games on Nintendo Switch Online, the remakes and remasters released for Nintendo Switch, as well as the newest mainline entries, Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. So let me know in the comments, which Zelda game did you guys get started with? If you want to hear more about the Zelda games that are available on Nintendo Switch, feel free to check out the video below. For now, thank you so much for watching. My name is Chase, and I will see you guys again soon. Bye!